It's 3 o'clock. It's
Thanks
for coming. It's £16 million of public funding for open standards, open source, and Drupal. The slides, if you want the slides, because sometimes they're useful, there's a QR code there which will take you to the Google slides, so feel free to that. Say again? It's not working. It worked for me earlier. Oh. It's also at the end.
No, let's crack on anyway.
It works for me, yeah? Okay, cool. I'm Finn Lewis, technical lead at LocalGov Drupal. I'm a long-time Drupal developer, open source enthusiast, digital manager, and sometimes I go to disco training the night before for an hour's worth of intense workout, which is really, really hurting now, so I might have to sit down in a minute.
I didn't go to disco training, so I'm Will Callaghan, I'm product lead for LocalGov Drupal. And you notice we got basically the same photograph. So that's a beach in Eastbourne where I'm from, and that's a beach in Brighton where Finn was
I'm
last
not
week,
from.
where he's not from. And we did the same moody pout as well, which we're both really proud of. So I'm a DrupalCon newbie. This is my first time at DrupalCon, having a brilliant time. And thank you to everyone who's come up and said hello. Because it's slightly nerve-wracking coming and doing this on your first DrupalCon, but we're having a good time so far.
Smashing. People
Yeah.
are great. So briefly, in this session, we're going to look at the Local Digital Fund in the UK, which some of you know, have a look at the open source funding in other countries, which is super interesting, and I think we've got lots to learn, and then some conclusions and actions for next step, and hopefully have plenty of time for questions and discussion and share some next steps where you can help us maybe. So, Local Digital Fund, what is it? It's been £16 million of funding since 2018. It's for councils in the UK, which are local authorities. That's double-clicked. Maybe use that button.
Yeah.
61 council-led funded projects, tech projects in the UK to date that we know of. It's not actually running for new things at the moment, but it's still continuously funding some projects. And importantly, it's to improve digital services for citizens and disrupt the market where proprietary software is maybe got big vendor lock-in and not really delivering very well, and through open source and collaboration we can shake things up a bit and make things better.
So just to clarify, this is money that the UK government is handing out, mainly to councils.
Only to councils, yeah?
Only to councils, yeah.
Which is one of the conditions of funding. Directly to councils, not to suppliers, not to Drupal developers or directly, but to councils, and then they can procure services from developers to help them should they need it. It's also, collaboration is built into it. You need to have at least 2 councils in order to apply for the funding. So not one council doing something on their own, but really trying to infuse the idea of collaboration as part of the funding. And the local digital declaration is required. It's required that they sign up to the local digital declaration.
We ought to explain what that is, right?
I'm glad you asked, Will. Thank you. The local digital declaration is an amazing document that came out of the Government Digital Service in the UK in collaboration with local authorities in 2018. They co-wrote this aspirational document for how we're going to work together to make digital services better, develop them more collaboratively, and follow some really good kind of best practices.
It's worth a read. It's short.
It is. There's a link to it there.
Yeah.
And it is fairly short, but it does within it kind of embed some of the principles that I guess we in the Drupal community know and love around embedding an open culture, working in the open, working collaboratively. So starting to infuse the idea of probably open source is a good idea here. Also, where appropriate, bit of a caveat there. I've removed that word. Operating according to the technology code of practice. Which comes out of the Government Digital Service, and there's a link to that there, which is a longer set of points, requirements, or guidelines, I guess, from GDS. But if you follow that link, there's a couple of key ones there, one of which is be open source, use open source. So specifically saying software that we're developing should stand on top of other open source software and should be open sourced as well. And also to share, reuse and collaborate. So if you dive a bit deeper into the local digital declaration, you start to get these conditions which are that it needs to be open source, which is perhaps not first and foremost.
No, you have to dig down a bit. And the interesting thing, it's saying don't necessarily originate something new. Go and look at what other people are doing. It's like an encouragement to go and talk to other people about the work, which was sort of, we're not going to steal our thunder, but that's kind of the inspiration for what we've been doing all the way along.
Let's not reinvent wheels.
No, who next to you is doing the thing that you're trying to do?
So just to briefly summarise, use and produce open source, work in the open, collaborate with others. And if so, you can have some money to do some interesting things.
Yeah.
So, Will, what makes the project successful?
Yeah, so what we're here really is to talk about the learnings and what worked and what didn't. So from a UK government perspective, in order for funding to be given, what they were looking for is adoption, really. They were looking for use of the software. So the more you could say 2 councils, 8 councils, 20 councils, 50 councils have used this, the more money they would give you. They were also interested, obviously, in creating better services for citizens. Like if you're spending money on code, but it doesn't result in a better service, then why bother at all? But also, sadly, everybody in the UK will know that we're still, not necessarily in name, but certainly in spirit, in austerity. We're still spending less and less money, and we're being expected to do more and more. So this software has got to save cash, ultimately. It's got to do a better job for less. They're sort of very high-level conditions, and what we're going to talk about now is sort of 3 or 4 projects that were funded by the Local Digital Fund, and we'll see whether it made those conditions or not. So the first one we're going to talk about is called LocalGov IMS, or Income Management System for short. And we're going to skip over these really quickly, but if you've got any questions about any specific one, then obviously we'll stop and talk about it. So it's basically, this is the nuts and bolts of what a UK authority uses to count money. It's where all the bills come in, where they all go out, where all the reconciliation happens. It's what finance officers use. And a group of councils got together and said, do you know what? We're sick of this vendor-led stuff that's crap, frankly. We're going to go and build something for ourselves. So they did. The project started in 2018. It received about £500,000 altogether. But the sad thing was that none of the councils have actually adopted the work. So the council that built it has got its own open source version of the thing that was genericised and now is available to everybody. And sadly, no one else has used that. So it's sitting there ready to be used. And really the problem here, and we'll talk about this a few times, is there's a risk to adoption here. So finance officers are risk-averse people. They're dealing with the crown jewels. It's the most valuable information that a council maybe holds, where the money's going, what's being spent. And they don't necessarily want to take the risk on an open source system or move all of this stuff. So sadly, this software is sitting there. Although we are speaking to the people who run this project, and we're sort of lending a hand.
There is hope there, isn't there?
There is hope. It's not dead
it's not
by
dead,
any means,
but
but it could do. It could do better.
Perhaps with a bit of money to help people adopt it.
It might get adopted.
Anyway, another project, Open Referral UK. This is an open data standard in the UK for to standardise the communication of services, by which we mean sort of services by community or council for citizens within a geographical area, or perhaps beyond a geographical area. That is key to the use case. If we just have a look at London, for example, these are the kind of the council areas in London, all of which have a bunch of services that they need to promote to their citizens. However, if I'm in South Bank, do I just want to see services in South Bank? No, I want to see services from all around London. I work on one side of the London, live in a different side of London. So at the moment, most councils have services just from their geographical area. What we want to see, what Open Referral UK aims to do, is publish that data in a consistent way so that people can consume and share the same data across, multiple regions, maybe your region, your neighbouring councils.
It's actually based on a US standard. There's something called Open Referral, which you might have heard of, and the UK version is like a fork of that.
So pretty cool. It's been started in 2022. It's had also near enough £1 million of funding. It's got sort of initial startup funding and then sort of ongoing funding at the moment to try and encourage growth. But adoption has been slow. And again, maybe there's a bit of a sort of cost and risk adoption, but also you just need a critical mass of users for a data standard to really mean anything. You need enough people publishing the data, and then you need people to start consuming it so that it's actually being used and there's motivations both ways. We don't know of anybody actually consuming other people's data, but we do know that Greenwich Council, where we did some work to help them over the last couple of years, are consuming their own data from an Open Referral UK feed. So this is a Drupal site, a LocalGov Drupal site, which is consuming Open Referral UK data in the standard way. However, it's just their own data they're doing at the moment. So the proof of concept is there. And we also have the LocalGov Open Referral module, mostly written by EECS, which publishes the data in an Open Referral UK standard-based way for LocalGov Drupal directories. So any council that's using LocalGov Drupal directories should be able to publish their data relatively straightforward. So hopefully we can speed up the adoption and do some proofs of concept of that and drive that forward.
So we've talked about 2 projects, there's 2 to go. So open digital planning is something that I worked on until recently. So I do 2 jobs. I do LocalGov Drupal for half the week, and then I do something else to pay the bills in the other half. And this was something I was consulting on. So the UK government wants to build more houses. It wants to grow out of its financial crisis. So the Labour government committed to 1.5 million homes between now and the next election. And what this project was specifically looking at was the software that planners use in order to make that process faster and more repeatable. So the UK government funded through the Local Digital Fund 3 projects. I won't read these things out. There's a project for planning applications that citizens use. There's a system for planning officers where they look at all these cases and they kind of say yes or no to them. And then there's a final system that actually allows the councils to say, here's all the applications that are live. What do you think as a community? Do you agree with these things or not? You can offer feedback on them. They also have done some other related work as well. There's this amazing thing for data nerds like me, planning.data.gov.uk has basically brought all the data sets that have lived in filing cabinets in councils around the country and actually created GeoJSON files and other files where you can look at all the conservation areas, for example, or the tree preservation areas. So there's loads of really good data that's being collected and starting to be used. The same programme has also looked at data standards. They're trying to encourage a standard for planning applications. They're trying to get all the existing software providers to use it. They're even giving them money to adopt it and co-design it. So there's loads of work going on there, which is great. So just looking at the stats for this particular project, started in 2019. It's had about £1 million as well. I think that £1 million is a magic number. It's kind of where the government starts to get cold feet, maybe, and not fund it as much. Not sure. Hope none of my colleagues are listening. Anyway, there's more money going on now because this is a political priority. The community's big. It's 145 councils altogether, or planning authorities. But the use isn't so big right now. And if you're in the keynote earlier, you heard them talking about vendor lock-in. I think that's the problem with this market. Probably with the IMS market as well. You've got a few big players who are not necessarily evil, but they deliver what people want to buy. So if councils always ask for the same stuff, vendors will always provide that stuff. And what the software in this particular market does is it's a small sliver of planning called development management. So they're really good at that. But councils buy other things as well. You won't see any of my hand movements on the video here, but anyway. So building control, if you're in a council, you'll know what that is. And land charges, and loads of other things that councils need in order to get this stuff done. Only the biggest vendors sell all of this stuff, so it makes it very hard for a startup to come along and take some of that market. So they're stuck, and all the big software things that local government use, they're all in a very similar boat, unfortunately. Let's talk about the project that we love so well.
We love LocalGov Drupal.
We do.
So just in case anyone doesn't know what LocalGov Drupal is, it's a distribution for councils to publish content for their citizens, for their public-facing corporate website. We've got about 58 councils and 19, we've got more suppliers than that actually now, but 25 suppliers I think, and growing. So just briefly on the stats, we're reasonably successful. Started in 2019, had just shy of £1 million from the Local Digital Fund to collaborate initially with 2 councils and then 6 and then now 50. 58 it says on the website there.
I think it's 60 on the website.
I think it is 60 now, isn't it? I thought it was a screenshot from last week. Constantly growing, so keep track. But yeah, about 25% of councils are using Drupal. And why? Because it's a good product. It's a credible product. We've got a good thing going on, but also we've got a community, and we're building on the Drupal community. I think that's been a big key to the success there. So, just briefly on the stats, in 2019, we were like second place after Jadu. Jadu is a proprietary CMS, and other CMSs are there, but you can see, Drupal is already doing quite well. So we were off to a good start. Fast forward to 2025, and Drupal is out in front with 100 sites, which is about 25% of the sites. So we're doing well. They're not all LocalGov Drupal sites, but a decent percentage of them, maybe 70%,
70%,
is that. And we're working on the others to bring people across. Looking at the trend there, just looking at actually Drupal's growth. Don't have all the data, like better data, but and credit to actually Colin Stenning from digital health check
Yeah.
on all this data because he does a stunning job on gathering the data. But Drupal's on the up, and I think it's going to continue to be on the up. So let's keep on doing what we're doing and do more things better. But our funding stopped in 2022, 23. Like William, like Will said.
We're very formal in this room.
William said, maybe it's that £1 million mark is a
Only my mother calls me.
sorry, is a key point. So we were faced with the question of, well, what do we do? Luckily, the Drupal suppliers and Drupal community is super strong, and the Drupal suppliers stepped up and committed to putting some money in the pot to fund a core team and fund infrastructure and keep things going. With that, the councils started to do the same. They were like, okay, yeah, let's put some money. We're starting to see this. We could actually co-fund this and make continue to make it work without.
This idea was
core
covered
funding.
in the keynote. It's like a very broad basket of people that pay a very small amount each makes a very resilient thing, and that's what we see, right?
Indeed. A public-private kind of funding model, quite innovative. We haven't seen it in any other place, but we think it's good and it's working. So we set up Open Digital Cooperative, which is a non-profit, multi-stakeholder co-op, formed of a membership of councils and suppliers. So the organisations are members, and these are all the subscribers. You have to be a paying subscriber to be able to become a member, and then you co-own the company and have a say in how it's run. You can find out more at opendigital.coop, which I didn't put on the slide. But importantly, we've got loads of supplying subscribers, a lot of which are lovely Drupal development agencies like Anatech and Agile Collective and Zucha, and these were the people who in the early days just said, yeah, we can see this is going to work, let's put in some money to keep it going. And that sort of led to more companies jumping on board, not all of which are Drupal. Some people are like content or marketing or other
User research.
but gathering a load of suppliers who are willing to put in a sliding scale of funding, not dissimilar to the Drupal Association model, but then also councils. So these are public sector bodies who have been convinced to give us a bit of money every year, again a sliding scale, in order that we've got money in the pot to...
So it's anything from about, if you're tiny, if you've got a small population, if you've got a smaller budget, about 1,500 quid a year, which is a total bargain. The biggest council, I think, is Essex in terms of budget and population, gives us 10,000 a year. And again, that's a total bargain, so for them.
But of the 58, we've got about 33 subscribing, so we want to try and increase that number and grow the part, grow what we can do, grow the resources that we've got in the central team. So just briefly to summarise that, Open Digital Cooperative, a community funding model with like private and public funding, subscriptions from councils and suppliers, said the same thing twice, and the funding funds our core team and infrastructure. So what can we learn from all that, Will?
So we've talked about 4 projects and we've talked about success criteria. So let's tell you what we think, and we actually disagree slightly, don't we? I don't know if we're going to have a fight on the stage, because I think the fund was okay, could have been a lot better. You think it's actually been really good. So I don't know if this disagreement will come out in what we talk about. We certainly agree on these findings anyway. And it might seem a bit obvious, but funding is essential. And no money at all makes it very difficult for people to do anything. We've all been in that situation. Too much money, conversely, actually makes the thing bloated. It's hard to know where we're going. How many projects of that kind have we all been in? Maybe too many. But also the timing of this is really important. And as a recipient of local digital fund money, I think the fund actually was set up in a really good way, in that the right amount of money was available when you needed it. And a lot of these funds aren't set up in that way. It's actually very hard to access follow-on funding. So what we were able to do is say, okay, we've got to 4 councils, we need some more money. We can show how this is going to grow. We can show what benefits that might accrue to the councils and to the public at large. And really, it was as simple as that. And our handlers said, yeah, that's fine. Like, we can give you some more money based on, short slide deck, here's some more money. You've proved that you actually make a difference. But a lot of the other projects, because they couldn't get adopted, are still stuck in this trap. They can't move forward. So almost it's, funding is important and time is important, but it's not the only thing that's going on here. And throwing more money at it isn't necessarily an answer to some of the problems that we're seeing. Because I think the second most important thing is, well, perhaps the single most important thing, is around the community, and we've really benefited as LocalGov Drupal from our community. So some of you might see yourselves on this slide. This is from LocalGov Drupal Camp, which is an annual thing that we do every year. Slightly later, it was very hot in July in Westminster. We generally do it earlier in the year. But we've gone from 2 councils to 8 to 22 to 50 plus now. And we've also had the Drupal community behind us giving us that all-important leg up. You know, just talking to people today about group and other things that we've inherited from this community has made a massive difference to us. And if you look at some of the other projects, sadly they don't have that kind of support that we've had. The closest of the 4 is probably Open Digital Planning. So they have a big community. There's an enormous amount of goodwill. There's 140 councils in it. One of the suppliers in this community said there's no way we could work on user needs or do prototyping or test anything or really ship anything if this community wasn't there. You know, it's basically impossible. So if you look at some of the other projects that are out there that need this kind of community activity, IMS hasn't got a community. Open Referral kind of has. But it's important, and you know, more money needs to go into growing. It's not necessarily paying people to turn up, but it's creating the space for people to show up and actually have conversations. It's like a 10% time type of argument, I guess. Third one, maybe this is UK only, I don't know, but we are all cash strapped as organisations. So in order to invest in something new, we need to let something go. We've got to let something go so it frees up money to put into the new thing. I don't know who else is in that situation. There's not surplus money around. So if you're a startup wanting to replace legacy tech, you've got an uphill battle. You've got to show that new solutions not only satisfy all the needs, they're credible, the organisations that represent them are credible, they're going to be around for the long term. This is probably the biggest barrier that these startups have. I mean, happily, we were able to overcome this. And I think it's partly the strength of the Drupal community meant we were ready with products that could be adopted, and we had models that we could share, we could talk about. So these are a couple of pages from our business plan, showing growth, showing financial contributions, showing sustainability, really. So you can go to suppliers and to councils and say, we think, you know, give us £2,000, give us 10 grand, we're going to be around, like we're not going anywhere. And so people were able to kind of put their weight behind it.
I think just specifically on that, again, the Drupal community, the suppliers that said yes in the first place, allowed us to have these projections and then go to councils and say, come on, like, this is going to work if you do it as well. So we were lucky to be able to bootstrap in that, and I think, you know, props to the Drupal suppliers who did that. Yeah.
Last learning, there's probably 24 other learnings, but we'll spare them. We'll spare you them. The fund was set up to disrupt markets, and we've been trying to find them. There were pages and pages written with disrupt markets, and none of them are currently live, so we can't show you a screenshot of that, sadly, but it was definitely talked about. We're going to shake things up, we're going to disrupt markets. But that's not enough. Funding 60 projects and hoping for the best isn't really a strategy, which is, I think, basically what it became. I'll get shouted at after this, I'm sure. What they talked about in the local digital declaration was they're going to fix the plumbing. It's a phrase, there's a hashtag on Twitter or X now, fix the plumbing, I think it's still around. They're going to look at inflexible and expensive technology, they'll look at safe ways of doing data sharing. So it's the infrastructure that underpins all of this. And again, in the talk just now, you know, what are the things that are going to break up vendor lock-in? You know, it's breaking up inflexible technology, encouraging interoperability, can say it, modularity. You know, it's those sorts of things that are really going to work. But the funding really didn't go to that, sadly. There are positive signs here. So this is, again, from the Open Digital Planning project. What they're realising, it's not just about product, it's about standards as well. So this screenshot on the right here is a bit of a thumping great UK law called the Levelling Up Regeneration Act, which is hard to say after a couple of drinks. LURA for short, which basically says we are putting in law the concept of approved software. We're not going to say what it is, but we're basically holding some space so we can say what it is in secondary legislation. So approved data and approved planning software. I've not seen this done in UK law anywhere else. I think they're going to start doing it more. There's certainly a lot of interest in it. So we'll do that, which will get vendors talking. They'll be wanting to know what this is actually about. We can start having conversations about standards. we can talk about whether we need to legislate some more or not, but at least it gets the conversation going. And then on the left here, there's some activity around co-design. This is from a blog post by CLG, where they're saying, okay, we're going to do a planning application data standard. We'll design it with you. So these are all really good signs. What it will end up with is things like this. It will be better buyer behaviour. And it's not because buyers are not smart. They haven't necessarily got time. And they're predisposed to get the work done quickly. They haven't got time to think about lots of different options or maybe do things differently. But this one buyer, it's a council in Sussex near where I live, basically said, we want Drupal, which is great, well, LocalGov Drupal, and also the supplier needs to be on the Drupal supplier directory. Like for us, this is the best kind of purchasing decision they can ever make. It means that supplier's giving us money, they're contributing to the co-op. They might be a member of our co-op, they're bought into collaborative working, they contribute. So it shows how buyer behaviour can make a complete difference in this space. So it's like, how do we do this for more, more software?
And that's something we haven't seen. Well, 10 years ago, just to go back to that point, 10, 15 years ago, I was told by a council procurement person that we can't even specify open source software. That would be anti-competitive. We definitely can't specify Drupal. And now we're seeing them not only specifying LocalGov Drupal, but saying we need to be on the supplier directory.
We didn't tell
which is
them.
Great. Yeah,
we didn't tell them to do that. They just did it.
But we're going to promote the hell out of this and try and get more people to do it, because it's a really good. It shifts the dial towards open source in general and towards supporting what we're doing. But yeah, sorry. Other countries. Let's have a look around. What else is going on in the world? And there's a great blog post by Dries, probably seen it a couple of months ago, where he talks about public money, public code supporting the infrastructure. I wasn't in the keynote. It sounds like there was a bit of that discussion then as well. So briefly, other countries. Germany had the innovation fund. Sorry, the prototype fund for innovative new software projects. I think it started in 2013. Funded maybe around 400 projects. It's still going today. Importantly, they fund developers directly. Developers, either individuals or development teams, to create new software that's somehow socially positive or maybe disrupting the market. But I'm not quite sure on the criteria. But so slightly different to what we're seeing in the UK, in that they are funding developers directly. Fast forward to 2016, and they started the Sovereign Tech Fund. This is specifically funding for existing open source projects. So maybe that came out of that. I'm not quite sure. I haven't spoken to anyone from the German government or from the funds. I would like to. But supporting existing infrastructure, supporting existing open source infrastructures, very specifically FOSS, free open source software. Things like PHP libraries or Python libraries, or some low level things that maybe as well as Drupal in 2023. They had around almost 300,000 euros to, I think, do the automated updates initiative or part of that. Really, really cool. I just found out yesterday in the Drupal Association meeting that they've just got another £300,000, which I think is for the GitLab integration and community migration of that, and the documents, moving the documents.
Yeah,
that's what. Is that right? Have I got that right?
I'm not sure about the second one, but yes.
Okay, I just got that from Tim Lennon earlier, so I think. So continuing to fund Drupal as kind of core infrastructure that the German government respect and use and need and want to support, which is great. We need to see more of that. The Danish government agency wants to get rid of Microsoft completely, get rid of Windows, get rid of Office, and replace it all by the end of this year.
So if there's anyone who knows how this is going, because it's gone really quiet.
We'd love to hear anyone from Denmark.
I think this was April, and it says they're going to do it by October, which is now right.
Indeed, so, that was June. Yeah, June. But so massive. I wonder how much they're going to save. But yeah, anyway, props to them to doing that. The United Nations. France became the first government to sign up to the United Nations open source principles. Which is how I actually found out about the open source principles, which I think were published earlier this year. The Drupal Association is also a signatory to the open source principles, so I guess we should all be putting our weight behind that. A great sort of global statement to say that open source software is important and here to stay and should be done right. Switzerland has laws that mandate that all public money for software needs to be open source software, unless it really can't be for some, there's always caveats, but that's massive, and I think that's shifted the dial a bit. I was speaking to somebody from Switzerland, from Leap earlier, saying that has shifted the dial towards much more open source procurement there. France has a similar law, the Circular 5608, which was a couple of years, maybe a few years ago, and I think the Harvard Business School did some research suggesting that actually increased GDP and led to more innovation, decreased software patents, which these days is seen as sort of anti-innovation because patents take too long, software moves pretty quickly. So the fewer software patents we see, the more innovation is seen to be there, seen to be going. The European Commission estimated that £1 billion worth of investment in open source software from private companies in 2018 led to 65 billion in GDP or the economy, which is amazing. This is research and evidence that I think every government should be like, well, that makes sense. Let's invest in open source software because it's going to make things, it's going to stimulate the economy and innovation and everything else. Meanwhile, Taiwan, a bit further afield, and I just love this quote, it's from The Guardian last year, from Audrey Tang. Anyone who's committed to open source projects for the last 8 years can come and have residency here, can come and live with us, can have citizenship. I'm not sure if it's citizenship or residency was the word used, but that's amazing. Not incentivizing new contributions necessarily, but rewarding the fact that people have been contributing for the last 8 years and acknowledging that as something that's really good. So lots we can learn from other countries and I think replicate in the UK, hopefully.
We're on the home straight. Thank you for bearing with us. So we're going to wrap this up in a second and maybe we can take some questions. So I think there's a few things that overall we've learned. So every government, but definitely the UK government, should think about funding, but we think the funding needs to move on a little. It's actually about adoption for projects that are basically ready to go, but the council can't take the risk of moving. More for open source, like the infrastructure that supports us all. We don't have a sovereign tech fund in the UK, maybe we need one. And to create that open source infrastructure. And where's the money to create communities of interest for people to actually take time out of their day job and come and have a chat? Because that leads to all sorts of things. LocalGov Drupal started with curiosity, part frustration. Somebody definitely has the same needs that we need. Let's just go and talk to them and see where that gets to. But it's the time that takes. Who's got time to do that? We think there's definitely some conversation or some more work around standards in markets that need them. In local government in the UK, there's plenty of standardless, sort of open, sort of Wild West sort of country really that needs to be. It needs more thought to help people do the right thing when they're buying and they're selling. And we think there needs to be more legislation for modern software. So the UK government talks about modern. We think modern is open source, and probably some more things besides, but certainly open source is a prerequisite. So let's campaign for that. If you agree, come and talk to us. Because the alternative is this, and it probably needs no explanation. This is what's happening right now: 10 billion into Microsoft over the next 5 years. A lot of that's gone into Copilot and other things, and it's taken money away from content designers who are trying to do the right thing. So it's where's the pushback? Where's the counter argument to this? UK government watchers will know. Maybe others will go, "What's this?" And yet another acronym. 2/3 of the English councils are getting shaken up. This is seismic for us. It means, don't worry too much about the colours on the slide, but all those councils are changing. In the next 5 years or so, they'll need to find new ways of working, they'll need to buy new technology, and that could be a race to the bottom, or it could be something that's incredible. So, how do we make that change, and how do we fight for the future that we want? So, we need to resurrect this hashtag, fix the plumbing, which seems to be forgotten. It's all AI these days, and it's not about infrastructure anymore, and it really should be, at least in part. And when we've got it, we need to fund it and maintain it and grow it. And that we do need standards, and some of that needs to be backed by legislation where necessary. People need to be encouraged and sometimes mandated to do the right thing. And probably train some more plumbers. So we'll get our Mario hats, which we didn't bring to DrupalCon, unfortunately. Needs more people who care about this stuff, who can talk about it. So thanks for listening. You can contact us at Open Digital Co-op or through our website, LocalGov Drupal. I think the QR code does work. Those are our email addresses, and we've got a BOF in not very long, half an hour. So, yeah. If you want to talk about LocalGov Drupal, anything really to do with it, if you want to find out more about the project, come and give us a shout. Or if you want to talk about any of this as well, because it's totally related, open source funding in the UK, come and talk to us. Where is that, BOF?
2.66.
kind of that way.
4:15.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much. Any questions? We have a mic knocking around if anyone's got any questions, or comments, or suggestions, or corrections.
Because you might go, actually, you're barking up the wrong tree. The answer is this that you missed, which is fine.
I don't have a question, it's just one word you can point for your sites. There's in Netherlands, there's the NLNet, which is another fund for people or organisations working on open standards and open software.
Love it.
Love it. NLNet. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was told about that yesterday. I didn't have time. And there's also a European directive of some sort, which is EU level promoting open source, which I couldn't quite find what the thing is, but some people from the European Commission were mentioning that. Is there anyone from the European Commission here? Oh, hi.
There's another one, next generation.
Say again, sorry?
Next generation.
Next generation. So what's do you want to pass the mic over? Just what do you know what the European directive is on open source? Does it encourage governments to procure open source? Is from a...
Yeah, working on these.
They're working on it. It's coming. Okay. So it's not out there yet, which is why I couldn't find it. But that's good. I mean, it doesn't help us in Brexit-ridden UK because we don't listen to European laws. But that's something that I think I'm quite keen to try and find people who are campaigning for that in the UK and then try and influence the UK government to adopt some of the other good open source principles that are going on in Europe.
Any thoughts or questions? We can get 10 minutes back.
Just one more thing. Hi Finn.
Hi Tony.
I think it's the sharing settings for the QR code. So
Is that on?
For me to log in.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, so that might be an issue.
Thank you.
We can edit that bit out of the recording. I think what we're trying to say is yes money and yes community, but actually there's more to it. And I think I don't know what other sort of government watchers in the UK think about this, but there's how interventionist do we want them to be? So what they seem to have done to now is say we're good at creating communities and doing jamborees and getting people together. They're really good at that. They're pretty good at paying money out, and they're quite good at spotting what money needs to be spent on. But that's kind of where it stopped for me anyway. This is my personal opinion, not any kind of government opinion. So how much more muscular do you want them to be? How much more prescriptive do you want them to be? So, because when they get into standards, that means getting their hands dirty and talking to vendors and actually encouraging them. Some people who don't necessarily want to do that. So, and then legislating is a step further forward. And it's in what they call market shaping territory, which our government hasn't been very good at, or not in this sense anyway. So it's like, do you want that? Do you want them to get into that? Because I think that's where it needs to go. And I think they're trying to work that out. I mean, this government is only a year old, the Labour government. So I think they're trying to work through this at the moment.
I think it's just interestingly, thinking about the other countries, France and Switzerland have these laws that kind of are mandating some open source procurement or pushing people towards that, and that's having a market shaping effect.
Yeah.
While Germany has funds and money to maintain, to innovate and maintain, but maybe doesn't have any laws specifically around
I don't
that.
know.
Maybe
I
they
don't
don't.
know
So I guess maybe both of them together would be ultimate. Some good funding and some open source, procurement guidelines or favouring it. But in Germany, they have decided on Typo 3 as the preferred CMS for government websites.
Not Drupal.
I'm not sure if that's legislation or policy or what, but I've heard that makes it slightly more difficult for Drupal agencies to kind of get their foot in the door. But at least it's open source and PHP, which is a good thing from a public sector perspective.
Should we stop there?
Yeah, unless there's any other thoughts or questions or comments or suggestions. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for coming.